Herzlich willkommen bei Report24. Mein Name ist Florian Machl und ich habe heute die Gelegenheit, mit ein paar sehr spannenden Gästen zu sprechen aus der Tschechischen Republik, die früher sehr intensiv in der tschechischen Politik aktiv waren und jetzt ein spezielles Projekt vorstellen. Herzlich willkommen. Welcome to Austria.
Ja, danke sehr.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
You told me you're here to present a special project.
The project is about a potential future for Central European nations, countries of Central Europe, by which we mean more than just like the Visegrad countries, but we would like to include Austria. We see an important role that Austria can play in our vision, in our project, then Balkan countries as well. We've already organized some international conferences where we are trying to launch a kind of a common initiative, explaining that we have a historical opportunity to define our own future as Central Europeans. We are forming this kind of a vision in the current times when we see what's going on in the East, right, with its own dangers, but we are also very dissatisfied with the political situation in the West, with the liberal progressivist agenda that's creeping into the former communist countries and destroying what's left from the traditional culture and cultural background of our countries. And so with those two threats, we think it's important to sit down as Central Europeans and discuss what we have in common and perhaps find our own geopolitical perspective in this current conflict that we are involved in.
Is there a special organization behind you with political power? So is it possible that your vision will be sometimes seen in reality?
Well, we hope so.
Good question.
You know, right now it's sort of a network of active citizens, active citizens in Czechia, in Slovakia, in Poland, Hungary, Serbia, Croatia. We have also partners in Austria, and we are actually happy about that. In Slovenia. So right now it's not a governmental project, but at certain point we hope that it will take off, that it will be taken seriously by the leaders. And we are quite optimistic about this because we think that what we do is not a daydreaming. It's something which is close to political necessity, because all of our nations are quite small on the global stage. Some nations are quite big in Europe, like Poland. Some are middle-sized, like Austria, Czechia, and some are even smaller. But on the global stage, all of us are small. And if we want to make our voices heard, we need something. And we always believe that it could be the European Union, Brussels. Brussels is sometimes useful. They can do useful things. But sometimes they do things which are not that useful. And sometimes they do the things which are quite harmful. So we believe that in Central Europe, these small nations of Central Europe need to have a network of cooperation. Right now, it's on the civic level. But at some point, we believe that we will be able actually to push it to the political level.
That would have been my next question, how your view of the European Union is. We heard something about this, but do you think your vision should be a replacement for the European Union, or are you planning to form a group of nations within the European Union?
Right now, we don't say that we need to replace the European Union.
Or leave or
It's a structure which has been developing for many years, and they can do useful things. As I said, when we are in the trade negotiations, it's somehow they do the things which none of us can do on his own. On the other hand, what we see inside the European Union are serious tendencies which are, I would say, self-destructive. Just imagine what they did with the green transition. It's a very serious attack on our prosperity. Or what they do with gender. That's attack on our identity.
Or migration.
Or migration.
Another
It's attack on our national cohesion. So we are on the crossroads in the European. Either the European Union will come back to its mind and will restart thinking, I would say according to the common sense, taking into account the political reality, and then it can be saved, and we will be a sort of a useful network inside the EU. Because even if you are inside, even if you are part of the EU, it's good to have some friends. Look at France and Germany. I mean, they have this network, and they are quite powerful. So even inside the EU, it's useful to have such network. But on the other hand, if on this crossroad they persist on this course which is against the reality and which is actually self-destructive, then we will have to think seriously about a geopolitical alternative. I don't say that we are at this point yet, but once we are at this point, we should be ready. We should not start thinking what to do once everything is actually destroyed.
Yeah, one of our colleagues is a very renowned, esteemed constitutional lawyer, and he is working on basically providing a certain position for both paths within European Union and outside of European Union, which doesn't mean that the second path is preparing for leaving European Union. That's not something that we are that's currently in discussion, but there might come a time with some crisis within EU when EU from its own contradictions would becoming falling apart. And for that particular moment, we want to be ready so that each of these countries are not then coming, sitting at the table with its own national concept of what to do, but to have a certain, to have a discussion already before, so we have some common position that could be taken. But there is also a possibility, even within the framework of the basic laws of European Union, to form even within the structure a more coherent, a more formalized type of cooperation between our countries, like something like Benelux might be one possible, So we think about all kinds of possibilities, and it might work in any kind of scenario.
So is it necessary that you have special kinds of political parties in all the countries you mentioned? Do they have to be socialist or right-wing, or is this an issue, or would it work with any party in any country?
It's quite interesting if you look how actually the European politics shifted. Because on the one hand, you still have some division between right-wing, left-wing, but it seems to us that it's probably not the most important division. Because what we see in the Western political systems, and we count our system as a Western political system as well, is that this traditional right and traditional left converged around, so I would say, liberal progressivism. So like here in Austria, if you are FVP, SPE, you don't have really two distinct visions of society. They're actually very, very similar. And then the real alternative is between those who are in this broad center. It's center, but they follow quite extremist policies, like this green transition, gender agenda, migration. So so-called centrist party, they self-identify as democratic. They say that they are democratic parties about themselves, which is pretty arrogant, because I see a real democratic party on the other side, because these are so-called populists. And I don't believe that this populism should be considered something as a bad word, because populism means that you really listen to people and that you keep your common sense. So for me, the big division is between these real Democrats, which are labeled as populists, and then Brusselized, Europeanized, globalized elite, which is represented by these centrist parties. And this division is a key division today. So I would say that our project is situated on the democratic part of this division. And with this respect, you have sort of real Democrats from the left, from the right, and they need to cooperate in the same way as these, I would say, Europeanized elites from the left, from the left and from the right cooperate. So we need to have this kind of alliance of democratic parties, real democratic parties, to really push to save Europe. Because I mean, because of what the Brussels elite was doing in the last year, we are actually on the verge of collapse, economic collapse, societal collapse, and even I would say the collapse of personal identities. So that's the issue today. We believe that some people who are now with the centrist parties may come back to their common sense, because many people who are in those sort of official parties, they still keep their common sense, but they are too afraid, because they are scared to say what they really think, because they are scared that these liberal media will make a chase after them and they will hunt them. So they either they keep silent or they repeat the things they do not believe. We know this from the 1980s. And in the 1980s in Czechoslovakia, people were silent. So they had their own opinions, but they did not dare to say them in public. And we never imagined that we could experience this in Europe. In the 1990s, when we joined Europe because we believed that this is behind us. Now it comes back from Brussels. So it's a serious case for us to do something.
Yeah, we are just, the Czech Republic is commemorating 20 years now. It will be, or is now, right? 20 years that we've, of the entrance into European Union. Some of the people even celebrated, but most of them would just only commemorate it, because the European Union since then changed dramatically. I mean, at least what was proposed, what was told us before the referendum, was that we would be a fair partner, right? We would be considered, as a partner on the same level with all the other countries. And now, after 20 years, we see basically emergence of a supra-state where these countries that were brought in 20 years ago don't play any part, in this, and we are being dictated, how to behave and what to think and what to do. Otherwise, we will sanction you. You will lose access to the funds and things like that. I mean, that's a completely different picture that was presented to us 20 years ago. And Petr is right. I mean, in the 90s, for example, the dividing line in the society was between left and right, mostly in economic terms, taxation, things like that. But there was a broad agreement on basically the foreign policy issues. But now, and it's not just the case of Czech Republic, but all other countries, we see there is a birth of a new division or a new dividing line, and it's between the sovereigntists, those who are defending the sovereignty of their country, and the centralists, those who want to centralize the power in Europe, the globalist powers. This is the defining line. So that's why groups, even like Patrimonium Sancti Adalberti, which is behind the Central European project, but other various civic associations and initiatives, you see people from right and left converging to defend the sovereignty of their country, right? And on the other hand, you have a different kind of right and left on the globalist side. So that's a new moment, and I think Patrimonium plays a role also in explaining this new situation on the international scale.
Here in Austria, we view many Slavic nations or Eastern nations in a way where we think you had dictatorship not too long ago. So you're more resilient and you see all the stuff which is coming from the globalists, from the European Union. It's a new form of dictatorship, you told me just now. So the question is, why do you see Austria as a part of your new project of nations? What can we contribute?
I mean, you are part of Central Europe. You know, it's difficult to imagine a serious Central European project without Austria. So the map, that's the first reason, but not the only reason. Because when we observe the Austrian society, we always have the impression that it's actually more, it's somehow naturally conservative to some of these trends. Of course, you have extremist parties, like, for example, the Greens. They are everywhere. But on the other hand, I don't think that they would represent the bulk of the Austrian society. I would say that the bulk of Austrian society, the great societal majority, is actually naturally conservative, not ultra-conservative. It's a conservatism of common sense. You have come up actually with quite reasonable policy on migration in the European Union. And it seems to me that you are not actually avant-garde of these societal experiments, which we see actually coming from Brussels. And it's actually linked with the map. We believe that there is something like a Central European mentality. And this Central European mentality is today often violated by these trends which come from Brussels. So in this respect, Austria, for us, is a natural partner. We are neighbors. We share many things. Common history. We have this neighborhood, and we should be actually able to protect it together, because there is no one else who will do it on our behalf.
And I think there is another distinctive, important element of inspiration for us, and that's your neutrality. Especially today, when we are, because for example, the Czech Republic, which is told, you should follow the orders that are coming from Brussels, from Washington. If you want to be part of the club, then you have to be, member of various alliances and so forth. I think the position of Austria is much more sound. Is not taking part so aggressively as, for example, the Czech political elite, the current Czech political elite. And we think that if we as Central Europeans would be able to form a coalition of countries, then we together will be much stronger on the world scene. It would be more difficult for the superpowers just to tell you what to do, and then you should just follow the order, right? Then you have a certain position that's strong enough if it's a coalition of countries, and then you do not have to proclaim, I'm dedicated to the West, or I'm dedicated to the East, or South, North, whatever. No, we are Central Europeans. We have our own identity. We have our own common destiny.
Yeah, I think this important point about neutrality, because this is a value which is quite threatened today, even for Austria. I mean, you are also under enormous pressure from Brussels and from elsewhere to give up, or perhaps not to give up on it, but to weaken it somehow. And we think that it's actually an important value that you sort of take care of your security, you do it responsibly. And you may also get involved into some other fights, as long as you feel that it's something which directly threatens your sovereignty, your interest. Unfortunately, Czech Republic and some other countries in our region got entangled into the fights which are not their own. And that's very unfortunate, because we are small countries, and small countries should promote the peace, not to be really on the side of war. So we should leave this stuff to great powers. If they want to wage wars, let them do it. But we should be able actually to speak with everyone, to be open to everyone, helping, giving all kinds of humanitarian assistance to those who need it, but really be very, very careful before sending any weapons, troops, etc. So in this respect, I think it's a very, very wise policy, which Austria is still, it's struggling, but it still keeps it somehow.
We should talk about power blocks. We heard the United States. We heard something about wars. We have the big war of Russia against the rest of the world in the Ukraine. So Austria, you say we are neutral. Okay, I have to accept it. It would be very
On
nice.
paper. on
Yes,
paper.
on the paper. But your new project of countries, uh, do you plan a power block which is able to tell the United States stop if it's too much? Because we also heard all the craziness which is poured over our countries, the transgender agenda, the Green Deal, you name it. And I think many of these things are originating in the United States. It is also possible it is originating in China, I don't know, but it's coming from the outside.
Yep.
So the question is, how do you plan to counter this?
Well, that's why it's better to be together, because we believe that we should have good relations with United States, but we should also keep good relations with China. At some point, we should renew our relations with Russia as well. So, of course, today it's difficult to talk about Russia because there is this war, which is very unfortunate
Tragic.
from all the sides. It's very unfortunate. But in future, of course, Russia will be part of the game. China is part of the game. United States will be part of the game. And we need to make clear to them that we want to be their partners, but not their servants. So when they need something from us, and we are able to help with it, and we see that it makes sense for us, we will be happy to do it. But we are not actually ready to serve as a tool of their own policies, which go beyond our interests and which may damage us. From time, well, some countries in the region can do it. I think Hungary has quite a successful foreign policy in many respects, and that's why Orban is actually so hated by people in Brussels. For me, he's an interesting example what you can do, even as being part of the NATO, being part of the EU. So you can achieve quite a lot. But of course, he's alone, and he's very well aware of these limits. If we have more self-confident, sovereignist leaders in Central Europe, then the whole of Central Europe will be stronger. But these must be people who are not afraid of being sort of criticized by Brussels, of being treated as populist, extremists, etc., etc. They need to forget about these labels, and they have to listen to their own people. And then, we can have very self-confident and powerful Central Europe.
Could it also be a power block within NATO with own interests?
Can be, but NATO is a very specific organization. And it's in this respect, it's different from the European Union, because on the one hand, it looks more democratic. Because in the NATO, everything is decided by unanimity. So everyone has veto on paper. But in reality, it's really has been always centered around around US interest. So in this respect, I'm not sure whether you don't have too many blocks in the NATO. It's United States, then their friends, and then sometimes others. Yeah? And these others are very, very sort of careful not to be too self-confident, not to be not to be seen as nasty to United States. But right,
With the exception of Turkey.
with the exception of Turkey, with the exception of Turkey. So right now, again, if we have Central European bloc, it can be in economy, it can be in strategic issues, it can work in NATO as well. But we need, but the first thing is to have these self-confident leaders. And that's why we believe that the citizens, a citizen network like ours can be useful, because we point to these examples and we try to create the confidence among the Central European nations, which is not easy as well, because we have our common history, which is a big asset, but there are also some liabilities which are connected with the history. So we believe actually, but we believe there are enough serious and reasonable people in Central Europe who can cooperate.
There is a similar project to ours, to Patrimonium, and that's Intermarium, right? That's also kind of a vision, 3Cs initiative. Yeah, that's right. Which also is a kind of a block of states in a broader region, that's not dealing the issue of European Union and things like that, but just creating a block of countries. But the difference between our project and Three Seas is that the Three Seas was launched by the Atlantic Council, right? At their meeting, it was there. At the especially our beloved friends in Poland, they like that idea, obviously, because they play a special role, and it's part of their own national debate. I mean, going back, into the early 20th century. I mean, the vision of a kind of a Central European, broader Central European cooperation or a confederation or something of that sort. But it's very risky. It's very risky because it's being used as a tool also by including the Baltic states. It's being used by the Americans as a tool of their tool in their position towards Russia, right? And we also we are not like pro-Russian in the sense that we would be on the side of Russia in the current conflict. No, but we are our position is that our own Central European vision has to grow from the grassroots, from ourselves, not that the Americans or Russians or Chinese or anyone else will tell us, well, we think you should organize yourself this way, and then we'll like you, and then we'll cooperate with you, and we'll trade with you, and okay, and we'll just bow our heads and follow, well, their interests, and that's something that we counter with our own project. We say yes to Central European Union, even to a certain Three Seas, a moment there, but not because they're not to fulfill the interests of any of the superpower.
If someone is interested in your project, maybe someone wants to contribute, is there a homepage or
Yes.
how can he contact you?
So it's PSA ZS, which is the name of that website, and there you have the Czech and English version, right? So you click on the English version, and you get all the informations about our association, about our activities, and because there is a possibility to get involved also. We organize international conferences. And what's special about these conferences is that they are held in Prague, and we are like the main organizer or someone who makes all the logistics. But the program of the conference is decided by all of us, which is Patrimonium and all our partner groups. And at this moment, it's 8 countries, I think. We have partner groups in 8 countries. And we get together in the spring for 2 days, and we discuss the content of the November conference. Each partner group is responsible for selecting a national delegation, 20, 30 people from each country, people of that are also involved in the public debate, politicians, people from business, from academia, from media, people who shape the public opinion in their countries. And we get together at this conference, and besides the official program like speeches and Saint Adalbert Award that is given to some very esteemed person from some of the country that's known for his Central European activities, and there we continue with our networking. So
This is the booklet with which we started. It was 2 years ago. And this booklet can be freely downloaded from our website. And if someone is interested, we are ourselves a civic association, so we are also interested in other civic associations. So if there are civic associations in all these countries, let them contact us, and we can discuss how we can cooperate together. It's not necessary that it's just one association per country. So even though we have some partners in Slovakia, we have partners in Austria, it's not exclusive. It does not mean that no one else from Austria may join us. On the contrary, we want to create a broad network of these civic associations so that we can mobilize public opinion and we can raise awareness also of these opinion leaders to this issue.
Let me say thank you for your valuable insights, and I wish you a pleasant stay.
Thank you for your invitation. Thanks.
Thank you very much for your interest.
Appreciate.
Die unabhängigen Journalisten von Report24 sind in mehreren Ländern unterwegs. Wir erzählen auch die Seite der Geschichte, die Ihnen der Mainstream vorenthält. Unsere Arbeit ist nur durch die regelmäßige Unterstützung durch unsere Seher und Leser möglich. Vielen Dank.